Hi, I'm your host, Becky Davis, and you're watching GardenWise, Santa Barbara's most informative show about sustainable landscaping. Our community has seen no shortage of wildfires over the years, and as Santa Barbara County remains in a drought, our hot and dry conditions continue to make us exceptionally vulnerable to more in the future. Although there's no way to guarantee your home's safety in the event of a wildfire, there are measures that can be taken to reduce the risk. In our first segment, we talked to Ann Marks of the fire department to learn all about the importance of defensible space and how it can even save your home.
So we're here at the Firescape Garden, which is a FireWise and a WaterWise garden. And what we have here is the map of the Firescape Garden. And this illustrates the point of the zones. So what we're going to do is we're going to walk through the Firescape Garden and give you some examples of the different zones and talk about them a little bit more. So we're at Zone 1, and Zone 1 is the zone that's closest to your house. It provides the best protection against a wildfire. It's 0 to 30 feet from the house, goes out to the 30 feet, and again, it's the most open characteristic of the zones. So low-growing materials, a lot of hardscaping, trees within this zone, but the trees should be planted so that when the canopies are fully grown, they're at least 15 feet from the eaves or the roof line of your structure. It's a highly irrigated zone, which having more water in the plant material provides the best protection. The other thing that's important in this zone is the ground cover. In Zone 1, you want to use non-flammable ground covers. So here we have an example of some rock ground cover. Non-flammable, very important around the house so that fire does not move into your structure. So we're at Zone 2, and Zone 2 is 30 to 50 feet from the structure. This zone has an open characteristic. There's a little bit more plant material than Zone 1. In the Firescape Garden, we have a lot of succulents in this landscaping mixed with shrub material, and as you can see, we have trees within this zone. It still is an irrigated zone. It's not as green as Zone 1. You still have considerable plant spacing in between each of your plants. You can see that the plant material, there's low-growing ground covers. You've got some shrub material with some hardscaping, these large boulders. It's fairly open characteristic. But if you look at this vertically also, you can see that there's some mature oak trees in here. And this is a good example of looking at the vertical spacing and reducing those fire ladders or fuel ladders into the canopy of the oak trees. As you get into Zone 2, into Zone 3, you do want some mulches. You want to save the water that you're actually utilizing. And with the mulch, as long as you keep the first zone clear of the mulches, you can have those within the other 3 zones. So this area right here is an example of some ground covers that we have in Zone 2. This is Diamondia, and Diamondia is an excellent ground cover, very fire-wise. It holds moisture, it's very low growing, it requires very little maintenance. And if I look on the other side of the path here, you can see that we're going into some concepts of utilizing succulents within the zone. And the succulents are excellent for fire resistance, and that's because they have the ability to hold water, and that retards the spread of fire. So we're in Zone 3, and Zone 3 is 50 to 70 feet from a structure. And Zone 3 has a lot of shrub material in it, smaller shrub material. This zone has more Mediterranean and native plant material that requires a lot less water. It still needs water to maintain that fire resistance, and it also requires a lot of maintenance in this area because of the shrub material, and natives create more dead material. There's spacing within this area. You've got ground covers in here. You've got a little bit more vegetation than Zone 2. You again don't have the fire ladders going up into the oak tree. And I'm talking a lot about oak trees throughout this landscape, and that's because this is a native landscaping. There are a wide range of trees that can be planted within your landscaping and still be fire-wise. So Zone 4 is our most native natural area of our landscape. So it is the area that is 70 to 100 feet from a structure and can go further out. We have in our extreme foothill areas, we have 150-foot defensible space requirement. So this is kind of the native landscape zone. You may already have native landscaping. If you have the native landscaping, what you can do is you thin. If it's a continuous amount of vegetation, you could remove about 1/3 of the vegetation, and you can limb up your shrubs, a foot from the ground. You definitely want to weed whip or have any dry grasses down to 4 inches of the ground or down to the ground. The grass material does not need to be raked up. You can leave that for ground cover and for stabilization of your slope. So what I want to show you here is a concept, the fire ladders or the fuel ladders, and this is where you want to have some separation. We're looking at a toyon, and then we're looking at an oak tree. It looks like there's some dead material up in here. We should remove that dead material and lower the toyon so it's not going into the canopy of these oak trees. So you have to look at your landscape and look at it annually to see what changes do you need to make. And the first thing we say is you start with what you have. You have to start with maintenance. You may have to start with doing some clearance. But the most important thing is to have a plan in place of what it is that you want to create. Property owners have an aesthetic idea of what they want to see on their landscape. And so we work with them on that aesthetic idea and help them try and figure out how do we create defensible space within their aesthetic landscaping.
For more information about the Firescape Garden or any other demonstration garden, visit waterwisesb.org/demo gardens. Now, if you're interested in making your landscape more fire-wise, but you're still not sure where to begin, you're in luck. Up next, local landscape designer Ariana Jansma walks us through how to design a beautiful garden that's both water-wise and defensible.
We are in Montecito and we're looking at a contemporary garden. From my perspective, it's one of the most fire-wise landscapes I've done in my almost 20 years. The reason is there are very few flammable elements. The trees, of course, are flammable, and the rosemary, which is in the center there, that's the green, that's flammable. But one of the things that I like to do, and this garden really demonstrates that, is if I have flammable elements, I try to put what I call fleshy elements on either side, surrounding them, because the succulents tend to slow fire down. Nothing can stop fire completely, but if the fire is not moving exceedingly fast and it's not burning incredibly hot, the succulents have actually saved homes. And so trying to get as much succulent material as you can around things that might be already in existence and are flammable is a really good idea. And not all clients, believe it or not, like succulents. And so there are some succulents that are more acceptable to people who don't like big spines. So it just totally depends on the client what they're willing to go for. In this case, this is a very contemporary home, and architecturally interesting plants are appealing, and a lot of succulents are that. The first plant I'd like to introduce you to, if you don't already know it, is chalk sticks. It's called Senecio madrilescae, which is much harder to say than chalk sticks. The reason it's called chalk sticks is because it has bluish green fingers that look like chalk. So you can take a look at these. They're very fleshy, individual little fingers of flesh. It's a very resistant plant. It can handle full sun. It can handle all the reflected heat off of the driveways and the pavement and whatnot, but it can also tolerate shade. Almost nothing eats this, which is another great reason for using it. If you want to cut a piece off, you can easily do that. You can usually stick it in the ground and it roots on its own. So it's an extremely hardy plant. The gophers might go for it occasionally, but one of the reasons I like to use it is because you can do large swaths of this plant material. And in a fire-prone area, if you've got a large swath of a fleshy material, you've got a really nice buffer, and you can see that it works really well color-wise as well with the green material that's around it. The second favorite plant I have for fire-prone areas is agave. This is a foxtail agave. They are really ubiquitous in Santa Barbara. You see them everywhere, in the medians, in all of the commercial spaces, on lots and lots of homes. But the reason they're so prevalent is they too are an extremely tough plant. This plant used to be up there close to the house. We cut it off, stuck it in the ground a few years ago, and now it's really rooted. And these things have really good extensive root systems, so they're able to pull a lot of water out of the soil. Gophers don't even eat them, which is a great thing. So again, you have a plant that's really tough, lots of water stored in those leaves and in the trunk, and hardly anything ever bothers it. I like to use them in the foothills, particularly on slopes. Fire can move upslope or downslope exceedingly fast. And if you've got something fleshy like this, you can slow the fire down. On the hillsides, I will do large swaths of these foxtail agaves, and they will start to pup on their own and make new ones. I don't know if you can see that plant back there, but there's a tiny little plant starting at the base. And once they start making new plants, you have another plant factory at your disposal. So you can continue to move your plants around for free, cut them off, plant them in another space, put them at the base if you like, but they are going to give you years and years of great protection. The third plant I'd like to introduce you to is an agave called Frosty Blue. You can see why they call it Frosty Blue. The coloring is just amazing, and it stands out from all the greens in the landscape. You don't need a whole lot of these in your yard to make an impression. Spiny plants, so you don't want to have them close to walkways if you've got kids or dogs or something like that. But again, nothing eats these. They are virtually indestructible, and they are just truly beautiful. They have this wonderful embossed pattern on the leaves, so it's not just the color, but if you get up close and personal with this plant, you can see how lovely it really is.
For a full list of plants and trees that are fire-wise, visit waterwisegardeningsb.org/plants. We'll be right back with more Garden Wise.
If I had anything to say to anybody, just look at everything as if it's burning. I view things even more critically as what is a fire ladder near the house, what plants are most flammable by virtue of their oils. If something's on fire, what are those flames going to be doing? We were sort of up to speed with what to take, what not to take, how to think about it. It meant a lot to me to be able to offer whatever I had, you know, because I had something still materially, but maybe some more energy that didn't get sapped by the trauma, you know, of all that loss, because I was going to be there too.
It's 4 a.m. Do you know what your sprinklers are doing? Broken drip emitter. Gurgling spray head. Broken pipe. Runoff. Check your sprinklers for leaks and repair. Visit waterwisesp.org for more information.
Thanks, guys. Darn.
Well, that was very thoughtful of you.
Well, you know me, Dad. Plants don't need as much water in the fall and winter, so I decided to get up early and turn it down.
So is that what you're wearing to Grandma's?
Take control of your controller. Turn it down.
Welcome back. With thousands of plants to choose from, it can be overwhelming to figure out which ones to put in your garden. Fortunately, in our next segment, local landscape architect and author Billy Goodnick takes us to a local nursery to show us how to pick the right plants.
Hi, I'm Billy Goodnick, and I'm here at Seaside Gardens in Carpinteria. Brought a friend along. I'm here to help you learn how to purchase plants with purpose. You know, plants aren't cheap these days, and before you start whipping out your credit card and loading them in your car, it helps to think a little bit deeper about the plants you're taking home than to just say, ooh, shiny, you're coming home with me. So come along with me. We're going out into the garden, and I hope you get some good takeaways from this. So before you get started, it makes sense to draw some kind of a plan, more or less to scale. One of the helps these days is using Google Images. You can at least sort of get the proportions of your property, but it's best to grab a measuring tape, go out, start from the house, and measure out from there. That way you have a fixed point. The reason we want to create something like an accurate drawing is because it helps us understand how much space we have, so we don't put in plants that are too big for the space. So to get you started, take your measurements and transfer them to some type of grid paper. If I'm using a 1/4 inch grid and a 1/4 inch equals a foot, if I'm going to be putting a 4-foot diameter plant in the ground, I'm going to draw a circle that takes up 4 grids. So it's going to be a 1-inch diameter circle equals a 4-foot plant. And what we're talking about is the mature size of the plant, not when it comes out of the container. So when you come to Seaside Gardens, you might actually be overwhelmed by all the different garden styles here. I think there's 11 different types of gardens. So how do you narrow down to what style is appropriate for your garden? You know, it might just start with what's already in the garden that you're going to be keeping. So if your garden already has a cottage sort of feel, or it's already got a lot of succulents, that's probably the best way to go, so things don't look too jumbled up. If you're starting fresh or you're just starting over again, you might start by looking at the house and seeing if there's an appropriate garden style that goes with your architecture. For instance, a Mediterranean Spanish style house, things like succulents around me here, a Mediterranean type garden is just going to feel more appropriate. Probably the most important thing to decide as you're picking out plants for your garden is how you're going to put the right plant in the right place. We think about sun and shade, but there's also some in between. There's partial shade, like if you're underneath the canopy of a tree like a jacaranda, there's still a lot of light. It's not direct sun. But one of the things a lot of people miss is the idea of a half-day sun, because half a day sun in the morning is much cooler and more benign, whereas a half-a-day sun starting at noon and going into the afternoon can still be very scorching for a lot of plants. So think about and learn what the ideal lighting conditions are going to be for the plants that you're choosing. Another thing to think about is the type of soil you have. In our area, a lot of soils are clay, they're slow draining, and a lot of these Mediterranean and succulent plants don't like having wet feet. There's things that you can do to amend the soil, but basically you're always better off picking a plant that likes the place that you're going to be putting it. So soil conditions are important. But I think where most people get into trouble is not understanding how big a plant wants to be when it grows up. So this plant, adorable, this is Coleonema pulchrum sunset gold. And it's adorable right now, and you might be tempted to put it in a little narrow spot along your house, but lo and behold, this is what they turn into when they grow up. Lesson is, give a plant enough space so that it can grow to its mature size without you having to prune it. aside from the fact that it's extra maintenance that we don't need, it also destroys the natural character of the plant. So I'm a strong advocate for understanding the mature size of a plant and giving it the space to do its thing. So we've talked in general about plants and what we're going to do with them, but now it's time to start getting down to which plants we're actually going to purchase, bring home, and put in the ground. So just like teenagers, plants need to do more than just sit there and look cool. Plants can do something. Trees provide shade. Tall plants can act as screening if there's a view that you don't want, or you need to use something as a windbreak. That's a function that plants can serve. They can be habitat, attracting birds, butterflies, bees, hopefully not gophers. We can also use them as edibles. There's a lot of plants that serve double duty, both as ornamental plants, but we can also pick the fruit off of them. Citrus trees, pomegranates, things like that are just beautiful plants, but we also get to harvest them. So we're thinking about what the plant can do for us. So there's still thousands of plants to choose from. So just for the convenience of how to think about those plants, let's divide them into 4 categories. The way I think about design, a plant is either a tree, that means tall on the top and either one or multiple stems, but everything's happening up here. We have plants that I call high, meaning they grow above eye level. Those are plants that we use for screening, for windbreaks, etc. The next category of plants I just called medium. This is really simple. Medium plants I classify as anything that'll grow from about eye level down to about knee high. And then there's the low stuff, knee high down to the ground. If all of these plants were like little ping pong balls, you would have 4 different bins, and you'd put all your trees in one, all your tall plants in another, your mediums in another, and your low plants. That way, when we get back to function and we're thinking about, oh, I need a windbreak, you're just going to be looking at the tall shrubs or maybe the trees. So we think about what the plants can do for us. That's the plant function. We figure out what size plant we need to do that job. And we've done some of our research and figured out if those plants are going to be happy in our garden. Whatever's left from that plant list, now you get to have some fun. Let's go over to the nursery and look at some plant combinations and see how we can create something that's really beautiful for your garden. Okay, so let's imagine we're tackling your front garden. You've murdered your lawn, and what are you going to do with that space? Well, we're going to plant it up with a variety of things. So what I've come up with is what I call the core of 4. The idea is that imagine that you only get to use 4 different plants, period. 1 type of tree, 1 type of high plant, 1 medium, 1 low. That becomes a lot more manageable in terms of creating something that satisfies you visually. Here's how we get there. Let's imagine that this leucadendron is going to grow up to be a tree. I've got a very Mediterranean looking plant. This is from Australia. It's got a beautiful look, but what I'm noticing is that aside from the gray foliage, which is very cool, there's tinges of red in here and the stems have some red in them. So I'm working with grays, but I've also got some nice contrast. It's an upright growing sort of wispy plant, looks very soft, nice starting point. What do you put with it? So let's assume that now I need some taller sort of background plant, something that's going to be up in this range. Although this Leucospermum veldfire actually doesn't get much taller than this, for the point of this demonstration, here's what I'm doing. Notice how the gray and the softness of this, there's a fuzziness to the leaf, picks up the same gray that's in here. There's even little tinges of red around the top. That's a nice association with the red that's in here. That's harmonious. Those two things talk to each other. But what I'm also looking for is some contrast. So I've got these bigger, broader leaves, a very different character to this plant. This grows sort of like a big pincushion. So I've got gray with gray, but I've also got textural differences between these two. Now I get down to the medium-sized plants. I'm looking for something maybe a little bit wispy, but also bringing in even more contrast. Voila, one of my all-time go-to plants. This is Lomandra Breeze, another Australian plant. So now I've shaken everything up. This has really no relation to the previous two plants that I picked. I'm just looking for contrast. So the foliage being upright, the yellow-green color, the wispiness of it gives me a nice amount of contrast. Now I'm looking for something that grows low to the ground. Core of 4. This is Erica, a type of heather, and it's also another Australian. And the reason I'm picking this, there's a little bit of red in here, but mainly it's that yellow-green that picks up the yellows in the Lomandra, and it's also got a very fine, delicate texture. So I'm working on all levels here between harmony and contrast, and that's really the key to visual design. How much contrast, how much harmony. So this is my core of 4. If these were all the plants that I got to use in the garden, I think it still makes a very interesting combination. The next thing you do is you just pick one more plant. Imagine none of these plants are in the palette anymore. I'm just looking for a second tree. So here is column 1. This is my tree. What would go with this Leucospermum? My hypothesis with core of 4 is that if plant B goes with plant A, then B should still go with these other guys. So all I've had to do is choose one more plant as a companion to the first plant in my row of trees. So I just went from a 4-plant selection to an 8-plant palette. If you need to go beyond that, that's fine. But this tells you what you like, and it makes it a lot easier to decide what those other plants are going to be, because they either go with or they don't go with what you've already chosen. So using the recipe analogy, I've picked out all my ingredients, and there may be portions of the garden where I need 6 or 8 of a certain type of plant, or 1 or 2 of something. How do you figure out which plant to actually buy, bring home, and put in your garden? There's a lot to choose from. I'll give you a couple of pointers. Okay, so let's say I need a few of these Leucospermum for my garden. How do you pick which ones you take home? Here's my first choice. I like this guy. It's symmetrical on all sides, nice, robust growing, but also I'm looking toward the future. It's got a nice little side branch here going out, and it's got a few radial branches near the base. That means the plant is going to start spreading out symmetrically in the garden. Whereas I might hold off on this one. It's got fewer side branches. Other than that, it's growing really well. Another important thing is, although this plant has gorgeous flowers, they're like golden spiders turned upside down, sort of like a pincushion. I generally don't buy plants that are in full flower. I know this sounds like heresy, but plants put out a lot of energy in order to produce flowers. When we first put the plants in the ground, we want all their work to go into growing a new root system. So don't distract them by having to put out fruit or flower. I know it's tempting. We want a beautiful display right away. This is not what we're after. Another very important thing, though, is what's going on underground. I can tell just looking at this that this plant is very comfortable in its container. It hasn't overgrown it, and it's probably well rooted. Get permission from the nursery first, or ask them to do it if you're a little bit timid. But what I like to do is tap the plant out, and this is exactly what I'm looking for. The plant has filled up the soil area, but it's not overgrown. If a plant has been in the container too long, real good chance that the roots have wrapped around the root ball. That's going to make it hard to free them up and grow. Sometimes it can actually strangle a plant. So look for a well-balanced root system, enough roots to get started. The last thing is, as you're putting the plant in the ground, I'll use my pruners and I'll just sort of scratch the outside. That frees up the roots that are in this pretty much artificial soil and allow them to start growing out into the new soil that they'll be growing in. So I hope this has been informative for you, helps you get some idea on how to shop for plants for your own garden so you're putting the right plant in the right place. 3 big pointers. One is do your homework. There's good information on the plant label, but I suggest that you go online. There's fabulous resources at waterwisesb.org. Thousands of plants, beautiful pictures of gardens, things that you can steal from or plagiarize. It's fabulous. The other thing is have a plan before you start shopping. I think all the considerations we went through here will serve you well. And the last thing is, consider plants that have a function, plants that will do something for you as well as look beautiful. So, time to take the plants home and get a little bit dirty in the garden.
For more plant and design inspiration, visit waterwisesv.org. You may remember in our last episode, Oscar Carmona, instructor of the Green Gardener program, talked all about integrated pest management. Up next, Oscar continues the conversation by taking a trip to Lotus Land and showing us how easy it is to invite beneficial insects into our own gardens.
Hi, Oscar Carmona. I'm owner of Healing Grounds Nursery. I also teach the Green Gardener program through Adult Ed. And we're here today to continue our conversation about IPM, which is short for Integrated Pest Management. And if you recall, we were over in Alice Keck Park, and we were over at Island Seed and Feed talking about different aspects of IPM. And today we're going to continue our conversation and talk specifically about beneficial insects. We're here today at Lotus Land in Montecito, and we're going to speak to a good friend of mine, Corey Wells. Corey, pleasure to see you on this fine spring day. And we're here in your insectary. It's becoming very famous throughout the area, and now I think statewide as well, as you connect into the broader network of beneficial insects and insectaries. Why don't you tell us a little bit about this part of Lotus Land? And I also want you to mention a little bit about the transition that you made to this point from where Lotus Land was, so that your average gardener can see the potential for change in their own homes.
Sure. This area was actually a flower garden going way back, to the days of Madam, but it was never really maintained properly, didn't have enough irrigation, that sort of thing. So it was completely transformed 3 years ago to be a proper insectary garden, not just butterfly garden, but pollinator garden, beneficial insects of all sorts, and especially native bees. So it does have a history of being a flower garden. But now we've really taken it to the next level. The plants here too, mostly are purchasable locally.
So when we're speaking about an insectary, it's important to note that we're talking about plants that are allowed to flower, right?
That's it, pollen and nectar. It's all about pollen and nectar.
So that's the key, right? Letting plants flower. Because a lot of times in our landscapes, we overly prune and we never allow the plants to unfold and to flower. So that's definitely a key part of it, right?
Yeah, I think we're seeing that in the last 20 years, 10, 20 years, we're seeing that type of Mediterranean landscape where they're allowing the plants to reach their full size, planting appropriate sized plants for the location, and then being really smart about choosing that plant, not just for looks, but does it actually attract the beneficial insects? A recent study proved that almost 95% of what we put in our landscapes repels most insects. And so what we're showing here is these are the exact plants to massively attract the insects.
And thanks to you a lot, in large part, things like this have greatly added to the ability of this garden to thrive without the use of pesticides. Is that true?
It is true, and really the way I like to think of it is what a perfect model. Take a huge estate in Montecito with great funding and huge support, and why not demonstrate there? What better place to demonstrate all of our sustainable techniques using compost, organic fertilizers, removal of all pesticides. And if we can, I've always felt if we can prove that here, that it works 100%, all the other big estates in the area, the homes in Santa Barbara and other cities, Carpinteria, and all the visitors that come here from around the world, they all get to see it actually works.
That's great. And so, what I've noticed right away is that there's a variety of plant sizes, shapes, right?
Shapes, blooming times. So we have early spring with our annuals, and then we have our late fall, some of our buckwheats and things that come on later.
That's really important, isn't it?
Yes, you want to have a pollen and nectar source through the entire season, even from early spring all the way to almost the beginning of winter, really. Several different types of bees. Remember, there's many species. And they all have these windows that they grow, and they need that pollen and nectar source at that time.
Well, that's a great point, because typically in springtime on a beautiful day like today, everybody appreciates the flowers and all of that, but we forget that we need to have plants that are going to bloom later in the summer, so that that there's ongoing sources of pollen and nectar, right?
Yeah.
Okay, Corey, let's take a little look around in the insectary and see what the different plants are that are growing and blooming so that the homeowners can figure out what it is they may want to put in their own landscape.
My pleasure.
Wow, here's a beautiful spot in the garden with all this nice color. Let's start here and talk a little bit about what's going on.
This area has turned into kind of a meadow effect, actually. You have the verbena and you have the native yarrow, the white, through there mixed with some poppy and scabiosa. This kind of meadow effect is actually very easy to produce. The poppy seeds are just tossed around, and now I don't even have to use those anymore because they'll reseed themselves. And then the other plants can be limited if they get too far out, but they grow so easily, and this is all very drought tolerant actually too.
And I see bees, and I see there was a moth here just a second ago, some butterflies.
Butterflies.
So all sorts of insects, the ones that we can even see, and I'm sure that there's ones that we're not even locating that are here.
Yeah, there's Coreopsis here too. Heliotrope is the purple there. A lot of these are locally available too, so you can get most and poppy seeds cheap too. So this is going to be it's a fun design here. There's actually quite a few other things that are coming up through too. You have these bigger poppies, these ornamental poppies. In the back you have California sunflowers, and then the big tall plants, Echium, that most people know of Pride of Madeira. This is a special variety of Echium called Echium wildpredii. Has one large stem with one giant flower and lots of little flowers on it. Normally it's a branched plant, is the one that we know locally. But these are a lot of fun. And yeah, I can see the honeybees coming in.
It's wonderful.
Let's head on down.
Well, this garden is so full of life. Look at all these beautiful insects. You can see bumblebee, and you were just saying a second ago there's many, many species of bees.
Yeah, we have almost 100 species just in this one area.
100 species of native bees.
Not honeybees,
that is
native
amazing.
Bees. We probably have about 105 or 10 native butterflies to this area.
And so some of the flowers are larger, some of them are smaller, and that greatly adds to the diversity of insects that are attracted.
That's a good point. You know, it's really the small flowers is the most important. Big flowers, once in a while, you know, some of the sunflowers and things are fun. They have the old-fashioned sunflower with the flat front, not the new hybrids, are very good. But these tiny flowers is really the way to go because, remember, a lot of those insects are microscopic. They're smaller, you can barely see them. So they need the right pollen and nectar, but they also need the floral design. You'll see the bees working on here now. They're just getting in there. This one's collecting pollen. This is a honeybee here off the top.
That's beautiful. And this is an Echium, right?
This is that Echium wildpredii. Remember, a key point at Lotus Land Design and for beneficial insects in general is mass planting. You want to plant a dozen, if you can, of something in a whole area. Bees, native bees especially, like a mass cloud of flowers all at once blooming. They don't want just one little flower. They won't come back then.
Yeah, and you know, just thinking as I'm looking over this pretty naturally growing area, what much of a contrast it is to the other aspects of your garden, which are pretty formal in many ways.
Yeah.
And so this is one of the things that we want to get homeowners to sort of envision for their own landscapes, that you don't have to always highly manage or manicure, although we're not saying good or bad. But this allows more of a habitat that will attract insects, something that's just naturally maintained.
You prep the soil, you plant, and then you leave it alone. Or you might top something once, just so it blooms, just so it has a round or more full, multiple flowers, not just one.
Yeah.
But that's it. There's not a lot of pruning involved. In fact, you want to stay out of the beds is the secret. Once these beds are amended and fluffed up, soil compaction is probably one of the biggest killers of a landscape. So no one goes in these beds.
Right.
And you can cultivate weeds if you need to with a hoe from 10 feet out. So no human steps on the soil. That's a huge lesson I'm trying to get through. Build your beds like they do in biodynamic design that are 4 feet wide or 5 feet wide, and then you can go around and through without stepping on those berms, those planting beds. And you'll see phenomenal growth that will surprise you.
That's beautiful. Thank you so much, Corey, for your time. It's always a pleasure, especially on a beautiful day like today. So beneficial insects are definitely a big part of IPM. You can have them at your home, by inviting them in with beautiful flowers that are always in bloom. We try to do this as much through the year as possible. I hope you're inspired to take a visit to Lotus Land, and until we meet again, happy gardening.
For more information on the Green Gardener program, visit greengardener.org. We'll be right back with more Garden Wise.
Oh no.
Hi. Oh, honey, how thoughtful of you.
You know me. Plants don't need as much water in the fall and winter, so I decided to get up early and turn it down.
You bringing your golf clubs to my mother's?
Yeah.
Take control of your controller. Turn it down. It's 4 a.m. Do you know what your sprinklers are doing? Broken drip emitter. Gurgling spray head. Broken pipe. Runoff. Check your sprinklers for leaks and repair. Visit waterwisesp.org for more information. Santa Barbara, the city you love. But to keep Santa Barbara the city of your dreams, you need to participate. And to participate, you need information. Get it from the source. City TV is the window to Santa Barbara city government. Television, internet, live or on your schedule. City TV. Stay informed, participate, and dream big.
I believe there is a mathematical formula for fun, and I'm using this train, the Pacific Surfliner, to find it. Free Wi-Fi, power outlets, onboard dining at the cafe car, mind-exploding views. Let's see where this train goes. San Luis Obispo, Santa Barbara, Ventura, Los Angeles, Orange County, San Diego, and there it is. Your formula for fun.
Welcome back. In our final segment, 3 contestants compete for the title of WaterWise Champion in our first ever game of WaterWise Jeopardy!
This is WaterWise Jeopardy! And here's your host, Alex Trebek.
Let's jump right in and meet our contestants. Callie is a professional dog walker and the current record holder for the most dogs walked at one time. The answer is 42 dogs, if you're wondering. Maria is a jazzercise enthusiast who jazzercises her way to work and loves 80s music. And our returning champion, Kathy, is a water conservation expert for the city of Santa Barbara. Welcome, everyone. This is Kathy's 10th time returning as our champion. She really seems to know her stuff. Callie and Maria, it's great to have you with us as first-time contestants. I wish you all good luck. And now, let's look at our categories. Soil, irrigation, plants, and potpourri. Kathy, start us off.
Alex, let's take irrigation for 200.
When it rains, your irrigation controller should be set to this percent. Maria?
What is 50%?
No, I'm sorry, that is not correct. Kathy?
What is 0% or off?
Correct. Your plants don't need to be watered for at least a week after it rains. Kathy?
I'll take irrigation for 400.
To properly irrigate trees, water should be applied to what area of the tree? Callie?
What is the trunk?
I'm sorry, that's not the correct answer. Kathy?
What is the drip line of the tree?
Correct. To water a tree's roots, irrigation should be applied around the edge of the tree's canopy or drip line. Kathy again.
Irrigation for 600, please, Alex.
This tool on waterwisesb.org is used to determine how much to water your plants. Kathy.
What is the watering calculator, Alex?
Watering calculator is correct. Kathy is on a roll again.
I'll take irrigation for 800.
You should adjust your watering to the weather by checking this weekly on waterwisesb.org. Maria.
What is the weather forecast?
No, I'm sorry, that's not correct. Kathy.
What does the watering percent adjust?
Correct. The watering percent adjust takes the forecasted weather and makes it simple by determining what percentage to water your plants. It doesn't get any easier than that. Okay, Kathy, choose your next category.
How about plants for 200, Alex?
Identify this popular drought-tolerant plant. Maria.
What is a succulent?
No, I'm sorry. We need something a little more specific. Kathy.
What is a Dudleya, or the giant chalk plant?
Right again. Dudleyas are ground-hugging, slowly clumping succulents with beautiful 12 to 18-inch wide rosettes of chalky white leaves. They are also known as chalk live forever. Kathy?
I'll take plants for 400, Alex.
This flowering drought-tolerant plant works great for screening. Callie?
I see this on my walks all the time. What is bougainvillea?
Wow, you're correct. The large amounts of flamboyant color on bougainvillea creates a wonderful accent in a garden. Varieties can be bush or vine form. Colors vary. Once established, they are very low water users and tend to be carefree. Callie, you're up.
Let's do soil for 200, Alex.
A thick layer of this material will help keep moisture in the soil. Whoa, Kathy was quick on the draw on that one.
What is mulch?
Correct. You should apply a layer about 4 to 6 inches thick of mulch around your plants to help lock in the moisture. And the best part, all of Santa Barbara County residents can get mulch for free. Kathy, you're next.
Plants for 600.
This California native is great for attracting bees and butterflies to your garden. Callie.
What is lavender?
I'm sorry, but no. Kathy?
What is purple sage?
Yes. Purple sage is a salvia native to the southern coast of California and Baja California. The flowers are highly aromatic and attract a variety of birds and insects. This plant is tough, easy to grow, and beautiful. It is amazingly drought tolerant, but it can also tolerate light water up to twice per month in the summer to keep it looking a little greener. Kathy.
Plants for 800, please, Alex.
This native water-wise shrub produces beautiful white pinkish flowers in spring and has a distinctive reddish-brown bark. Maria.
Oh, I know this one. I've seen it in the Firescape garden. What is a manzanita?
Can you give us the specific variety? Kathy.
What's Howard McMinn?
That is absolutely correct. What category would you like next?
How about soil for 400?
This tool is used to determine what type of soil you have and how wet or dry it is. Maria.
What is your smartphone?
No. Kathy?
What is a soil probe?
That is exactly the answer we're looking for. Soil probes are a quick and easy way to collect samples of your soil. Kathy, what would you like next?
I'll take soil for 600.
This fully decomposed organic material greatly improves soil health. Kathy again.
What is compost?
And right again. Compost helps add valuable nutrients to the soil.
Let's finish out soil for 800.
This soil type is ideal for most plants because it is a mix of sand, organic material, and clay. Callie?
What is potting soil?
I'm sorry, that's not correct. Kathy?
What is loam?
Correct, but I'm not surprised. Looks like we're moving on to our final category, potpourri.
I'll take potpourri for 200.
Potpourri is made up of a mixture of what 2 items? Kathy?
What is dried flowers and spices?
Right again. Looks like Kathy may remain undefeated, folks.
I'll take potpourri for 400. Alex?
Today's Video Daily Double. Who performed this famous award-winning single? Wow, Maria was really quick on the gun on that one.
I love this song. Who are the Garden Wise guys?
For the first time today, correct. What would you like next?
I'll take Pulpery for 600, Alex.
Urban outdoor water use makes up this percentage of water use in Santa Barbara County. Callie.
What is 25%?
No, I'm afraid that is incorrect. Kathy?
What is 50%?
That is correct. Outdoor watering makes up half of all water use in Santa Barbara County, which is why learning how to conserve water in your landscape is so important. Okay, last question for this round. This regional program educates local gardeners on resource-efficient and pollution prevention landscape maintenance practices. Kathy?
What is the Green Gardener program?
That is correct. You can sign up for the program at greengardener.org. Well, that's it for this round. Let's move on to Final Jeopardy. Contestants, place your wagers. Okay, for the final question, what website has everything you need to know about saving water and designing beautiful water-wise gardens? Okay, contestants, let's see your answers. WaterwiseSB.org is correct. Looks like Kathy remains our undefeated champion. But really, we're all winners when we visit WaterwiseSB.org. Until next time, keep saving Santa Barbara County.
Congratulations to Kathy for being the WaterWise champion. Well, that does it for this episode of Garden Wise. Remember, you are the agent of change, and together we can create beautiful, climate-appropriate gardens and conserve water. There are lots of resources online to help. Visit waterwisesb.org for tips or to view past episodes. If you have any questions or comments about the show, you can give us a call at 564-5311. I'm your host, Becky Davis, and keep it water-wise, Santa Barbara.